Hello, my name is Jamin Ma. My student ID is 21982436. So we're going to be solving for velocity c and angular velocity of c to b. First of all, given that angular velocity of a to b and radius of a to b, we can solve for velocity of b, which is 2 meters per second. And since direction a to b is 60 degrees to horizontal, and we acknowledge that velocity of b must be perpendicular to direction of a to b, velocity of b will be placed 150 degrees to horizontal or 30 degrees to horizontal. So given the angle, we can solve for x component and y component of velocity b, which is these two values. Now, negative for x component because they point towards left direction. Second, we set the equation for x and y component of velocity c, given that angle is 45 degrees to horizontal for velocity c. We can set these two equations. Now, negative for both of them because they both point towards a negative direction, which is down and left. We also recognize that because B and C is connected through a bar horizontally, their horizontal velocity must be identical. And since we already know a horizontal velocity of B, we can equate these two and solve for velocity of C, which is 2.45 meters per second. Also, given that using this value, we can solve for velocity y component of velocity c, and using those, we can solve for angular velocity of c relative to b, using the equation v equals angular velocity times radius. Now, y component of velocity c minus y component of velocity b equals angular velocity times radius. And we isolate for angular velocity of c to b, which is 7.81 radian per second. So how can we improve this design? Well, given that average velocity of these type of door is 0.7 to 1 meters per second, and given that our answer is 2.45 meters per second, it is much faster than this average speed, which means ideally it must be slower. So what can we do to decrease the velocity of c? The first thing we can do is decrease the input angular velocity, which is angular velocity of a to b. Because they are directly proportional, decreasing angular velocity of a to b will decrease velocity of c. Second thing we can do is decreasing the angle of slider c from 45 to 30 degrees to maximize the denominator and therefore making velocity of c smaller. Also, since radius of a to b is directly proportional to velocity of c, decreasing the radius of a to b will also decrease a velocity of c.